You did 21-10 down in that game at one stage and basically claw your way back into the game. And then say we're 4 minutes away from being the number one side in the world because you're leading basically through charge down and scrap type tries. Did you? I mean, if we had won that game, would you really thought, right, we're now number one rugby team in the world?
Well, yeah, when you say would I have thought, I mean, I knew that the difference between 1, 2, 3 and 4 on any Saturday is so close anyway. But the fact that you would have then been called the number one team in the world and you would have had back-to-back Tri-Nations, obviously you would have been the highlight of anyone's career. Looking at that test match, and again, I think the viewers would enjoy this by saying that, you know, what did we learn from that test match? I made a tactical error again. I was going to put Fourie du Preez on. In fact, I'd actually told him to get his tracksuit off and get him on the field with about 12 minutes left to go. And as I made the call, Ricky January intercepted a pass, gave it to Jacques Fourie, and he went and scored. And your gut feeling tells you that Ricky had just made a charge down before halftime, scored a try, made an intercept, and I thought that he would have a huge impact in the rest of the 12 minutes.
He did.
And saying that, he did. But the one vital area was in the right-hand corner, is when Ricky sort of took the ball, ran back into the scrum. Had Fourie been there, I mean, he's a much better kicker from the base. He might have kicked the ball outside the 22. So instead of them mauling the ball and eventually scoring, maybe what would have happened is they would have run the ball a little bit wider because the line-out would have been 10 yards further down the field. But, you know, those are, in hindsight, it's easy. At the time, had Ricky scored the winning try, people would have said, well, you know, great decision by leaving him on.
You're 27-4 up, 27-24 in the lead. Just take us through those last 10 minutes. And I want, at the same time, we see quite a lot of pictures of on screen of you, Gert Smal on one side and Alistair Coetzee on the other side. I mean, in the game, what sort of impact do they have? Are they conversing with you all the time, or are you now saying, I'm going to make the decisions? I mean, obviously they're feeding you with information, but...
Yeah, well, I think, again, we've got a wonderful working relationship between the three of us. I mean, they have enough freedom to take their forwards and their backs and work with them. What happens during the game is I will continually talk and they will write down things because they talk to their groups at halftime, and they make sure that whatever we speak about during the run of the game gets translated to them or given to them at halftime. But when it comes to those tactical decisions, I will obviously ask them, what do you think? But most times they will allow me to go with a gut feel. You know, and again, that's why I mentioned the Fourie du Preez thing. I think Fourie having kicked the ball outside the 22. But hindsight is an exact science, you know, and I think those are things that we all learn, not only players, but coaches as well. When we get that situation again, 10 minutes left to go or 15 minutes left to go, and we're struggling to get out of a part of the field. You know, if you remember that game as well, we had just, Andre Pretorius got injured and we had Jaco van der Westhuizen on. So we had literally no kicker or no, you know, great kicker, 9 and 10. We had rugby players, but we probably needed one kicker to be on the field. And again, that was something that, if looking back, maybe we should have made the call when it happened.
So you're leading now 27-24. The 34th minute here, my notes show me that Mialamu scores the try. McAllister converts, we lose the game, and the Tri-Nations 31-27. Were you gutted at that point?
Yeah, well, I was gutted from the point of view they got a bonus point as well. You know, that just made it, because I knew there was one more game with Australia and New Zealand to come, and that meant that Australia had to then win the game. You know, had that bonus point not taken place, and we had got a bonus point for losing by less than 7, even if they, you know, it was quite ironic because they got a penalty from that driving more. And maybe we should have killed the ball and seen what decision they make, because if they would have gone for poles and taken the draw and then backed themselves to win against the Australians with a bonus point, or would they have kicked to the corner and gone for the win? You know, again, that with the two rugby nations like South Africa and New Zealand, would they have settled for the draw, or would they have risked the chance of losing the test match to South Africa? But again, you feel, because that's it, it's finished now. Now it's not in your hands anymore. Now it's Australia against New Zealand the next game. And deep down, we knew that Australia hadn't, you know, they'd got a lot of injuries.
They didn't have the firepower really to take them on.
And it's because they had so many injuries as well. We realised that that could be one hurdle too much for them.
Yeah. So, okay, you come, I mean, let's face it, you come out of the Tri-Nations now with real credit, having, you know, you've lost in Sydney in the Mandela Plate. You've now come through the whole situation where you're firmly ensconced as the second best rugby side in the world, and you go to Argentina. When you go to Argentina, you think, no, we are the second best, and Argentina, a tough side out there. What did you feel about your preparation for the Argentinian test?
Well, look, we prepared really well. I mean, the team looked slick. We had picked up a couple of injuries in our training camp, which obviously ruled some players out. I mean, Chivanga pulled out. You know, Pedri Vandenberg pulled out. We had to replace him with Vickers van Heerden. And again, I mean, that obviously is disruptive. But at the same time, I thought we really prepared nicely in Johannesburg and the first week in Buenos Aires. But it's funny how your whole, I suppose, approach changes, not only from a coaching point of view, but from a playing point of view. From becoming the second best team in the world and this huge expectation, you almost put more pressure on yourself when you play against the smaller unions, because now people are expecting you to go on the field and just whack them, you know. And if you look at that Argentinian side, they had drawn with the British Lions earlier in the year with their B team. They had beaten England at home. They'd beaten France. They'd drawn with Australia at home, not this year, but when they, you know, tours previously. And so you're always under the impression with 15 overseas-based players coming back to play for Argentina that it was always going to be difficult. So, you know, I warned the players, and you know, as much as I kept talking to them that week about the whole sort of hostile crowd you're going to, you know, encounter in Buenos Aires, the more these players didn't understand. But at half-time, when they were 20-16 down, they soon realised what I was talking about.
Obviously, a bit of a change of tactics at half-time, where Argentina clearly indicated that they weren't going to pass the ball down their backline and would just about maul every ball that they had. And did you change your tactics there?
Well, not so much tactics, more so the defensive pattern, because what had happened was that we were getting caught on the sides of the rucks, and we were trying to spread out and use the width of the field in our defence, and it didn't work because they weren't asking any questions of the second and third last defenders. So all that happened was we actually just loaded the rucks in terms of the side of the rucks, and when, you know, didn't give penalties away. I think their first or second try came from, I think Oss dived in to tackle someone. He left a hole, and they ran through literally unopposed and scored under the pole. So, you know, when we said, look, they're not going to move the ball more than 2 passes, all you got to do is make sure you stand a little bit close to the rucks and make sure your first-time tackles, you know, count. We then put the pressure back on them.
I believe that Oss, in fact, had a contribution at half-time to change the tactics.
Well, that was because he's in charge of that sort of stuff. Said, listen, guys, they're not going to make 2 passes. Just stand closer to me. And again, when Oss talks, most people listen. So they all came and stood next to him.